I never thought my life would unravel on a Tuesday afternoon in my own living room. My name is Daniel Russo, and for 8 years, I believed I had built something solid with my wife Vanessa. We had a beautiful home in the suburbs, good jobs, and what I thought was an unbreakable bond. My mother, Margaret, had always been perceptive, the kind of woman who could read a room in seconds and sense when something was off. That particular afternoon, she'd stopped by unannounced, something she rarely did. I was in my home office wrapping up a conference call when I heard raised voices downstairs. By the time I ended the call and headed toward the commotion, my mother's voice had taken on that sharp, accusatory tone I recognized from my childhood when she knew someone was lying. "I saw you, Vanessa," my mother said, her voice trembling with controlled fury. "Last Thursday at the Riverside Hotel, with him." The silence that followed was deafening. I stood frozen in the hallway, my hand on the doorframe, unable to process what I was hearing. Through the crack in the door, I could see Vanessa's face drain of color, her carefully maintained composure cracking like thin ice. "Margaret, I don't know what you think you saw, but—" Vanessa started, but her voice lacked conviction. "Don't lie to me," my mother interrupted. "I've known you for 8 years. I've watched you become part of this family. And I saw you kissing another man in the parking lot. Your hand was on his chest. His arms were around your waist. Don't insult my intelligence by pretending it was innocent." What happened next occurred so quickly that I almost couldn't believe it. Vanessa's face transformed from pale shock to something desperate and wild. She stepped forward, and in a movement that seemed both aggressive and panicked, she shoved my mother backward, hard. Margaret stumbled, her arms windmilling as she tried to catch her balance. Her hip caught the edge of our coffee table, and she went down with a cry of pain and surprise. The sound of her body hitting the hardwood floor snapped me into action. I burst through the door, rushing to my mother's side. She was clutching her hip, her face contorted in pain, but her eyes were alert and angry. Vanessa stood there, hands covering her mouth, her eyes wide with what I initially thought was remorse, but quickly recognized as pure fear, not of what she'd done to my mother, but of being caught. "Mom, are you okay?" I asked, gently helping her into a sitting position. My hands were shaking, but my voice came out surprisingly calm. "I'm all right, Danny," she said, though I could see tears forming in her eyes. Whether from pain or betrayal, I couldn't tell. "But your wife, she just—" "I saw," I said quietly, cutting her off. I turned to look at Vanessa, really look at her, and it was like seeing a stranger. The woman I'd made love to just that morning, whose hair I'd brushed away from her face while she slept, whose dreams I thought I knew as well as my own. She was a complete stranger. Vanessa's mouth opened and closed, searching for words. "Daniel, she was attacking me, accusing me of terrible things. I didn't mean to push her so hard. It was just a reaction." "Don't," I said, the word coming out sharper than I intended. "Just don't." In that moment, as I helped my mother to her feet and saw the genuine fear in Vanessa's eyes, something crystallized in my mind. She wasn't afraid of losing me. She was afraid of losing everything she'd built around the lie, and that distinction changed everything. After helping my mother to the couch and insisting she let me check her hip, thankfully nothing broken, just badly bruised, I turned to face Vanessa with a composure that surprised even me. The anger I should have felt was buried beneath layers of calculated calm. Years of working in corporate strategy had taught me that emotional reactions rarely produced optimal outcomes. "Show me your phone," I said simply. Vanessa's face went white again. "What? Daniel, you can't just—" "I can, and I am. Your phone, now." She clutched her purse protectively against her chest. I held out my hand, steady as a rock. "This is ridiculous. You're going to believe her wild accusations over your own wife?" My mother started to speak, but I raised a hand gently. "Mom, let me handle this." I turned back to Vanessa. "I'm not asking again." The standoff lasted maybe 30 seconds, but it felt like an eternity. I could see her mind working, calculating, trying to find a way out. Finally, her shoulders sagged slightly, and I knew, even before she spoke, that my mother had been telling the truth. "It's not what you think," Vanessa said, her voice taking on a pleading quality. "Daniel, if you would just let me explain." "The phone, Vanessa." She must have seen something in my eyes, some finality that told her the game was over. With trembling hands, she retrieved her phone from her purse and held it out to me, but she didn't unlock it. I looked at the device, then back at her face. "Unlock it." I have a right to privacy." "You lost that right when you betrayed our marriage," I said quietly. "Unlock it, or I walk out that door right now and you'll be served with divorce papers by the end of the week." It was a bluff. I couldn't arrange that so quickly, but she didn't know that. Her fingers shook as she entered her passcode. The moment the screen lit up, I took the phone from her hands. What I found was worse than I'd imagined. The messages started 6 months ago. His name was Tyler Brennan, a colleague from her marketing firm. The early messages were flirtatious but deniable. Within 2 weeks, they'd become explicit. My stomach turned as I scrolled through months of intimate messages, plans for secret meetings, photos I never should have seen. But it was one particular exchange that stopped me cold. "Tyler, your husband still doesn't suspect anything?" "Vanessa, Daniel?" God, no. He's so wrapped up in his work, he barely notices what I do anymore. It's like living with a roommate who occasionally wants sex. "Tyler, speaking of which, thinking about last night, that thing you did with your tongue." "Vanessa, you like that? There's more where that came from. Daniel's working late tomorrow. Come over around 8? The conversation continued in graphic detail, describing encounters that had happened in our bed, in our home, while I'd been working to provide the life she claimed to want. I felt my mother's hand on my shoulder, steady and supportive. "Daniel, honey, maybe you shouldn't," she started. "I need to see it all," I said. "I need to know exactly what I'm dealing with." I spent the next 20 minutes scrolling through the evidence of Vanessa's betrayal while she sat on the opposite couch, crying silently into her hands. The messages revealed not just an affair, but a complete double life. Tyler wasn't the only one. There were flirtatious exchanges with at least 2 other men, though nothing as concrete as what she'd had with Tyler. What struck me most wasn't the infidelity itself, but the callousness. The way she described our marriage, our intimate moments, with such contempt. The inside jokes she'd made at my expense with her lover. The plans they'd made for a future together, contingent on her securing a proper divorce settlement. In one particularly revealing exchange, Tyler had asked if she felt guilty. Her response, "Why should I? Daniel gets what he needs. He has his comfortable life, his mother who adores him, his boring routine. He's perfectly content. I'm just taking what I deserve on the side." I looked up from the phone to find Vanessa watching me with red-rimmed eyes. There was still no remorse there, only fear and calculation. "How long were you planning to let this go on?" I asked. She opened her mouth, closed it, then finally spoke. "I never meant to hurt you." "That's not what I asked." She looked away. "I don't know. I felt trapped. You're never home, and when you are, you're thinking about work. I needed something for myself." "So you betrayed our marriage and brought another man into our bed?" "It wasn't supposed to mean anything," she whispered. I stood up, pocketing her phone. "I'm taking your mother to get checked out properly at the hospital. When I get back, I want you gone." "What?" "Daniel, you can't just kick me out of my own house." "Our house," I corrected. "And I'm not kicking you out permanently. I'm giving you space to think about what you've done while I figure out what comes next. Pack a bag. Go to a hotel. Go to Tyler's place. I don't care. But you won't be sleeping here tonight. The panic in her eyes intensified. Please, can we just talk about this? I made a mistake. Mistakes are accidents. This was a choice. Multiple choices, over 6 months. She rose from the couch, reaching for me. Daniel, please. I love you. I know I've screwed up, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can work through this. I stepped back from her touch. The only thing we're going to work through is the divorce proceedings. The emergency room visit revealed that my mother's hip was badly bruised, but not fractured, a small mercy given how hard she'd fallen. As we sat in the sterile waiting room after her examination, she finally spoke about what she'd witnessed. I wasn't spying on her, Danny, Margaret said, her voice tired. I was meeting Patricia for lunch at that hotel restaurant. We'd been planning it for weeks. When I walked through the lobby, I saw her. Your wife. In another man's arms. I squeezed her hand gently. I know, Mom. I believe you. The way they were together, it wasn't a friendly hug or a business associate. He had his hands on her face like she was precious to him, and she was looking at him the way she used to look at you when you first started dating. She paused, her eyes meeting mine. I confronted her today because I couldn't stand watching you live a lie. You deserve better than that, son. Thank you, I said simply, for caring enough to tell me, even though you knew it would hurt. She patted my hand. A mother's job is never easy. Sometimes love means delivering painful truths. When I drove her home later that evening, she insisted on making me tea, despite my protests that she should be resting. We sat at her kitchen table, the same table where I'd done homework as a child, where I'd told her I was going to propose to Vanessa, where we'd planned my wedding, and she looked at me with concern. What are you going to do? She asked. I don't know yet, I admitted. Part of me wants to burn everything down. The other part just feels numb. That's shock talking. Give yourself time to feel everything. Don't make any permanent decisions while you're still processing. I nodded, though I'd already made several decisions. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Have you ever suspected? Before today? Margaret was quiet for a long moment, stirring her tea absently. There were small things, nothing I could point to concretely. She seemed distracted these past months, happy but in a secretive way. A few times when I called, she seemed rushed to get off the phone, like I was interrupting something. But I told myself I was being an overprotective mother-in-law, seeing problems where there weren't any. You weren't wrong, I said bitterly. No, but I didn't want to be right either. I wanted to believe she was good enough for you. When I finally returned home around 10 that evening, Vanessa's car was gone. I'd expected as much. What I hadn't expected was the scene inside. The house looked like a hurricane had torn through it. Drawers hung open, closets had been rifled through, and there were gaps on shelves where various items had been removed. In our bedroom, the room where she'd entertained her lover in my absence, I found a note on the bed. Daniel, I've taken some clothes and personal items. I'm staying with my sister Rebecca. I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. What I did was unforgivable. But I'm asking you to please consider that 8 years of marriage deserves more than a snap decision made in anger. I never stopped loving you. I know that sounds impossible given what you found on my phone, but it's true. What happened with Tyler was a mistake born of loneliness and weakness. You worked so much, and I felt invisible. I'm not saying that excuses what I did. Nothing could excuse it. But maybe it helps explain why. Please don't contact a lawyer yet. Please give us a chance to talk this through when you've had time to cool down. We built a life together. We have a history. We have so much invested in this marriage. Don't throw it all away over one mistake. I love you. I'm so sorry. Vanessa. I read the note twice, then set it aside. The manipulation was so transparent, it would have been almost funny if it weren't so insulting. Calling a 6-month affair with multiple planned encounters one mistake was laughable. Blaming my work schedule for her choices was classic deflection. And framing my decision as hasty when she'd been lying to me for half a year was particularly galling. I pulled out my laptop and began documenting everything. I forwarded the most damning text messages from her phone to my email. I checked our bank accounts and credit cards, noting several charges to hotels and restaurants I'd never been to. I took screenshots of everything, organizing them into folders by date and type of evidence. Around midnight, my phone rang. Vanessa. I let it go to voicemail. She called 3 more times before finally leaving a message. Her voice was thick with tears. "Daniel, please pick up. I know you're angry, but we need to talk. I can't sleep knowing you hate me. Please, just call me back. I love you. I'm so sorry. Please." I deleted the voicemail and blocked her number. The next morning, I took a personal day from work and drove to the office of Michael Patterson, the best divorce attorney in the city. He'd handled the divorce of a colleague 2 years ago and had a reputation for being both thorough and ruthless. His office was exactly what I expected: expensive furniture, impressive diplomas on the walls, and an air of quiet competence. Michael himself was in his mid-50s, with greying hair and sharp eyes that seemed to catalogue everything about me in the first 30 seconds. "Mr. Russo," he said, shaking my hand firmly, "your message said this was urgent." "My wife has been having an affair," I said without preamble. "I have extensive documentation. I want to file for divorce as quickly as possible, and I want to protect my assets." He gestured for me to sit. "Walk me through everything." Over the next 2 weeks, my life became a carefully orchestrated campaign of legal preparation and emotional distance. Michael Patterson proved worth every cent of his substantial retainer. He advised me to maintain minimal contact with Vanessa, to document everything, and most importantly, to appear cooperative while building an airtight case. "Judges appreciate reasonableness," he'd explained. "You want to be the calm, rational party who tried to work things out while she's the one who betrayed the marriage and became unreasonable." Vanessa called from different numbers: her sister's, her mother's, her office line. I answered once, on Michael's advice, to say simply, "I need space right now. When I'm ready to talk, I'll reach out through my attorney." Her protests and tears were met with silence before I ended the call. What she didn't know, what I'd instructed Michael to keep quiet for now, was the extent of what I was planning. The house was solely in my name, purchased before our marriage with my inheritance from my grandmother. Our bank accounts were about to be frozen pending the divorce proceedings, and thanks to Michael's investigator, a former FBI agent named Raymond Cole, I had even more ammunition than Vanessa's phone had provided. Raymond had discovered that Tyler Brennan was married with 2 children. His wife, Christine, had no idea about the affair. Raymond had also found hotel receipts, restaurant charges, and even a weekend trip to Napa Valley that Vanessa had claimed was a work conference. But the most damaging discovery came from an unlikely source: Vanessa's own computer. Raymond had suggested I check for any devices she might have left behind. In her haste to pack, Vanessa had forgotten her iPad, which she'd often used for work. When I powered it up, it was synced to her iCloud account, giving me access to months of additional messages and emails. One email chain in particular made my blood run cold. It was between Vanessa and her best friend, Melissa Grant, and it painted a picture of calculated deception that went beyond simple infidelity. From Vanessa Russo to Melissa Grant. Subject: your situation. I know you think I'm crazy, but hear me out. Daniel is stable, reliable, and completely predictable. He'll never leave me because he's too invested in the idea of our perfect marriage. Meanwhile, Tyler makes me feel alive in ways Daniel never could. Why should I have to choose? You keep asking if I feel guilty. Honestly? Not really. Daniel gets everything he wants. A beautiful home, a wife who maintains appearances, regular sex when he makes time for it. He doesn't know what he's missing, so how can he be hurt by it? Eventually, maybe I'll have to make a choice. But why rush? Tyler knows I'm married and accepts it. Daniel doesn't know about Tyler and is happy. Everyone wins. This wasn't a woman who'd made a mistake or fallen into a momentary weakness. The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. This was someone who'd consciously decided to live a double life, who saw nothing wrong with using me as a security blanket while seeking excitement elsewhere. I forwarded the email to Michael, who read it and gave a low whistle. "This is gold," he said. "Premeditated, ongoing deception with no remorse. If she contests the divorce or tries to claim reconciliation was possible, this demonstrates a pattern of calculated betrayal. No judge will look favorably on this." "There's more," I said, showing him other emails where Vanessa discussed her exit strategy, how she planned to wait until my next promotion before divorcing me to maximize her settlement, how she'd been secretly documenting every purchase and asset to ensure she got what she deserved. Michael leaned back in his chair, a small smile playing at his lips. "Mr. Russo, I think we're going to do very well in this divorce. Your wife has essentially documented her own case against herself." 3 days later, Vanessa was served with divorce papers at her sister's house. Michael had timed it perfectly. Mid-afternoon when she'd be alone, giving her time to panic before she could seek advice. She called my office directly within an hour, bypassing the blocked numbers. My assistant, Karen, who knew the situation, put her through. "Daniel, what the hell is this?" Vanessa's voice was shrill with panic. "Divorce papers? You said you needed space to think." "I did think. I thought about 6 months of lies. I thought about you bringing him into our bed. I thought about your emails planning your exit strategy. I thought about everything, Vanessa, and I decided I'm done." "What emails?" "Daniel, I don't know what you're talking about." "Your iPad," I said calmly. "You left it behind. It's been very illuminating reading." The silence on the other end was deafening. I could practically hear her mind racing, trying to remember what she'd written, what could be used against her. You went through my private correspondence. That's illegal. You left it in the marital home with no password protection. It's perfectly legal and very informative." "Daniel, please." Her voice cracked. "Don't do this. We can work through this. I know I screwed up, but—" "You didn't screw up, Vanessa. You made calculated choices over months. You planned this. You discussed exit strategies with your friends. You convinced yourself you were entitled to betray me because I work hard to provide for us. None of that is a mistake. It's who you are." "That's not fair. You're taking things out of context." "I have to go. All future communication goes through my attorney. His contact information is on the papers you were served." "Wait. Daniel, please, just—" I hung up. The divorce proceedings moved faster than I'd anticipated, largely because Vanessa quickly realized she had no leverage. Michael had built such a comprehensive case, combining the affair evidence, the premeditated emails, and the proof that the house and most assets were mine prior to marriage, that her attorney advised her to settle rather than go to trial. "A judge would crucify her," Michael explained to me during one of our meetings. "Especially after what she did to your mother. We can use that too. Physical violence during the confrontation about her infidelity. She's looking at walking away with almost nothing if this goes to court." Vanessa tried several desperate moves. She showed up at my office one afternoon, makeup running from tears, begging to talk. Security escorted her out at my request. She sent flowers with apology cards. She had her mother call my mother, asking her to intervene. Margaret, bless her, told Vanessa's mother exactly what her daughter had done and that she supported my decision completely. Tyler Brennan's life imploded too. Raymond Cole had, at my request, compiled a similar dossier of evidence and sent it anonymously to Christine Brennan. Within a week, Tyler was served with divorce papers of his own. His wife took their children and moved in with her parents. Tyler lost everything: his family, half his assets, and his reputation at work when the affair became office gossip. Part of me felt guilty about destroying his life too. But then I'd remember those text messages, the casual way they'd discussed deceiving me, the graphic details of their encounters in my bed, and the guilt would evaporate. 6 weeks after that terrible Tuesday afternoon, I sat in Michael's office reviewing the final settlement agreement. Vanessa got her personal belongings, her car, and a modest cash settlement. Far less than she'd planned for in those emails, but more than she deserved. I kept the house, my retirement accounts, and my dignity. "She signed this morning," Michael said, sliding the papers across his desk. "It's done." I stared at the signature, Vanessa's familiar looping handwriting, and felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not vindication, not even relief. Just a vast emptiness where 8 years of my life used to be. "Are you all right?" Michael asked, his voice surprisingly gentle for a shark of a divorce attorney. "I don't know," I admitted. "I thought I'd feel something when it was over. Victory, maybe. Closure. But I just feel tired." "That's normal. You've been in survival mode for weeks. Now that the crisis is over, the emotions will catch up." He paused. "For what it's worth, you handled this as well as anyone I've ever seen. You kept your head, gathered evidence, and didn't let emotion drive your decisions. That's rare." I thanked him and left, walking out into a bright spring afternoon that felt surreal after weeks of legal warfare. That evening, I drove to my mother's house. She'd been my rock through everything, never once saying "I told you so," or making me feel weak for grieving the end of my marriage. When I told her it was finalized, she simply held me while I cried for the first time since discovering Vanessa's betrayal. "Let it out, baby," she murmured, stroking my hair like she had when I was a child. "Let it all out." When the tears finally stopped, we sat in her kitchen drinking tea, and she asked the question I'd been dreading. "What now?" "I don't know," I said. "Move forward, I guess. Figure out who I am outside of that marriage." "You're the same good man you've always been," she said firmly. "Vanessa's choices don't define you. Her betrayal says everything about her character and nothing about yours." I keep wondering what I did wrong, what I missed, how I didn't see it. "Danny, look at me." She waited until my eyes met hers. "You loved her. You trusted her. Those aren't weaknesses. They're beautiful qualities. She's the one who failed, not you. She took something precious and destroyed it because she was selfish and immature. That's on her, not you." 3 months later, I was still processing everything. I'd thrown myself into work, gotten promoted. The irony wasn't lost on me that Vanessa would have benefited from this timing if she'd been more patient. I'd started seeing a therapist to work through the betrayal and trust issues. I'd even gone on a few dates, though nothing serious. The house felt different now. I'd redecorated the bedroom completely, unable to sleep in a space that held so many tainted memories. I'd turned Vanessa's former office into a home gym. Slowly, I was reclaiming the space as my own. One Saturday afternoon, I ran into Christine Brennan at a coffee shop. I recognized her from the photos Raymond had shown me during his investigation. She was sitting alone, and our eyes met with the awkward recognition of two people bonded by shared trauma. "Daniel Russo?" she asked as I walked past her table. "Christine," I acknowledged. "How are you doing?" "That's a complicated question," she said with a wry smile. "Would you want to sit? I promise this isn't weird. I think we might understand each other in ways most people can't." I hesitated, then sat down. We talked for over an hour, two strangers connected by our spouse's betrayal. She told me about discovering the affair through the anonymous package, "Thank you, Raymond Cole," and how her world had imploded. I shared my story, my mother's discovery, the phone evidence, the divorce. "The worst part," Christine said, stirring her latte absently, "is feeling like a fool. Everyone at Tyler's office knew. People were talking about it, probably laughing about how oblivious I was. That humiliation is almost worse than the betrayal." "I know exactly what you mean," I said. "I keep running through every interaction, every excuse she made, wondering what else I missed." "My therapist says we need to stop doing that to ourselves. Their deception was skilled because they practiced it constantly. We weren't fools for believing the people we loved." We exchanged numbers before parting, not romantically. Neither of us was ready for that. But as friends who understood a particular kind of pain. A year after that confrontation in my living room, I was in a better place. Not healed completely, but healing. I'd learned to trust again, carefully and with boundaries. I'd discovered that I actually enjoyed my own company and didn't need a relationship to feel complete. My mother's hip had healed fully, and she'd taken up ballroom dancing, of all things, bringing joy back into her life after the trauma. I never saw Vanessa again after the final court proceedings. I heard through mutual friends that she'd moved to another city, started over with a new job. Tyler had done the same, his marriage destroyed and his reputation in tatters. Sometimes, late at night, I still thought about that afternoon when my world changed. The look in Vanessa's eyes when she pushed my mother. Not remorse, but fear of exposure. The way she'd tried to manipulate me, even as I held evidence of her betrayal in my hands. The calculated coldness of those emails planning her exit strategy. And I thought about my response. The quiet calm, the methodical gathering of evidence, the refusal to engage in the drama she tried to create. By staying controlled and strategic, I'd taken away her power to manipulate the narrative. By the time she realized what I was doing, it was too late. The lies she'd protected so fiercely no longer mattered, and the control she thought she had was completely gone. My mother had been right that first day. Sometimes love means delivering painful truths. But I'd learned something too. Sometimes strength means accepting those truths and acting decisively without anger or theatrics, but with clear-eyed determination to protect yourself and move forward. The marriage was over. The betrayal was real. The pain had been immense. But I'd survived, and more importantly, I'd done it with my integrity intact. Vanessa had chosen deception and selfishness. I'd chosen truth and self-respect. And in the end, that made all the difference.